Unit 6 Vocabulary. Cursory. The cursory cleaning of my bedroom was evident to my mother when she opened my closet door and all of my clothes fell out. She was extremely disappointed in how little effort I put into doing what she asked of me. If your teacher says you did a cursory job on your essay, you could probably expect what grade? An A because you took your time on the details, or a C because you did it quickly and didn't proofread it. Dearth. During the recession, there was a dearth of employment opportunities throughout the United States. The lack of jobs throughout the country made the unemployment rate skyrocket. Your friend told you there was a dearth of enthusiasm at the football game on Friday. You replied, "Man, I wish I was there, it sounds like fun," or "Man, I'm glad I didn't go because that sounds lame." Discriminate. When it comes to shopping for fruit and vegetables, I am a discriminating shopper. I make sure the items I choose are free of bruises and aging. If you are a discriminating shopper, you probably would do a cursory job and wind up with items you dislike, or you're probably meticulous in how you choose things because you're very specific in what you like. Droll. Mark's incessant droll comments could not be ignored by both his classmates or his teacher, but for different reasons. His classmates were oddly amused, but his teacher was annoyed at his sophomoric and loquacious behavior. How was Mark behaving in class? He was starting trouble by throwing things across the room, or he was constantly talking and making immature and unnecessary jokes. Exemplify. Martin Luther King Jr. exemplified what an ideal leader should be like. He practiced and preached his beliefs to all. The class president should exemplify the qualities of a good student. True or false? Exhaustive. Despite an exhaustive search of my house, I was unable to locate my favorite pair of jeans. Because I couldn't find them in any room of the house, I had to go and buy a new pair. An exhaustive search would be a detailed and thorough search or a quick and cursory search. Extant. Despite how far our country has come, hatred and racism are still extant in our society today. Extant means still existing or extinct. Grotesque. On Halloween, my brothers always get a kick out of scaring trick-or-treaters away with their grotesque masks. A synonym for grotesque is visually appealing or distorted. Inveterate. Thomas Putnam is an inveterate troublemaker. He has a long-standing reputation for starting fights with many of the townspeople in Salem. An inveterate smoker probably just picked up the habit or has been smoking for years. Meticulous. My sister is so meticulous in creating the details of her work, it sometimes takes her 4 hours just to sketch one simple drawing. If every single line on the page isn't perfect, she will restart the entire drawing. Meticulous directions on an assignment would be precise and helpful, or vague and confusing. Multifarious. Since the carnival was full of multifarious events, we could bring the whole family because there would be an activity for each person in the family. If you are assigned a multifarious project, you should get started ahead of time since it's multiple parts and it will probably be time-consuming, or you can wait until the night before it's due because it's only one task to complete. Obscure. With the help of a Guy was able to obscure his true identity and rob the bank without anyone realizing it. Guy wore a mask to hide his true identity or made a mean face to intimidate the bank workers. Orient. The grimace on my face must have suggested I was disoriented because the strange but magnanimous man offered to help me figure out what part of town I wound up in. Despite my facial expression and how rude I was to him, he still offered to help me become acclimated to my surroundings. If I am disoriented, I know where I am, or am lost because I am confused. Quintessence. Babies are the quintessence of purity. They haven't been exposed to any of the evils of the world, and this makes them the best representation for pureness. A synonym for quintessence would be opposite or ideal. Respite. Thanksgiving break is always a nice little respite to help revitalize our bodies and minds. You might need a respite after taking out the trash, raking the leaves. Sojourn. While Suzanne had originally intended for a sojourn at her sister's in Maine, it actually turned into a year-long living situation while she got her life back together. If you were going on a sojourn, you would probably need a bag packed with things you might need for a short visit, a moving truck to take all of your belongings. Squalid. Lou was horrified midway through the semester when he learned how grimy and filthy his roommate was. He couldn't understand how any person could live in such a squalid environment. When Lou finally confronted his roommate about his squalid apartment, what did he say? You need to clean your side of the apartment before we get bugs? Or can you teach me how you keep things so organized and clean? Subsequent. Our teachers implored us to pay attention to the lessons on Monday so the subsequent lessons would make sense to us. Her persistent requests throughout the lesson strongly suggested we would need the materials from Monday to understand the skills for the rest of the week. If you were implored to study so you would understand subsequent materials, you were asked once because you need the materials for tomorrow's lesson, or it was strongly suggested you pay attention because it was really important for understanding the week's materials. Transcend. Humans have the ability to transcend the evils of racism. If we can just look beyond the superficial factors of individuals, we can rise above the hate this world has. If you transcend poverty, you have to beg for money on the streets, or you're able to buy a home and pay your bills. Trenchant. Sometimes the tone of Rachel's voice is so trenchant that people think she is rude, rather than to the point and sarcastic. Which student is more likely to be trenchant in their writing? A student writing a narrative essay, or a student writing a book report? And those are your words for this week.